worship community. So our preamble to this one was this little blurb.
All right, here it goes. Musicians and worshipers are often artistic people with strong personalities and opinions. Amen.
Amen. Let's just stop and pray.
Leading and building community among musically diverse people from various generations, cultures, and ethnicities is essential. Building a worship community, a place where new songs are written and creative differences are celebrated, is our goal. We'll discuss how to build a worship community that fosters creativity and friendship in your church. That's the preamble.
So that's
the overview.
The overview. So yeah, we want to talk about how we build a worship community. So again, yesterday we were taking a look at how we build a worship set list. We're talking about how we build our worship pipeline. The last session we were just talking about how we build a worship culture in the church overall. And now this is looking at how we build a community. It's been said, I've heard it said, that what we celebrate, we reproduce. And I latched onto that, and I said it myself for many years. And then I examined it, and I thought, I think what's even more accurate is that what we tolerate, we reproduce.
Right.
And so when we're building, a community, the things that we tolerate are going to become a de facto standard. Mm-hmm. And as worship leaders and team builders, we're called to be standard bearers. And so we need to be able to articulate what that standard is and be able to call people and hold people to that standard. And kind of have some standards for just some basic things that I think, I guess to my mind they're basic, but the more that you look around, you realize some of these things need to be said out loud because it maybe isn't obvious in every setting. And so,
right.
Yeah,
so it's just some of the things that we don't tolerate. We don't tolerate drunkenness in our worship community. We don't tolerate sexual sin, mocking spirit / arrogance. We don't tolerate disrespect, inconsistent lateness / laziness, lack of participation in church life. So not being, a part of the church, part of this body. And then, and for the rest of the service. So if you play, it's not a gig. If you're on the worship team, we expect, you're pressing into the word. You're participating in what the church is participating in. So, that's building that community when we don't tolerate those.
Yeah, an articulated standard. And so again, when you can kind of draw that together with the worship culture, I think it's really important. And I said this in the last session, I'll repeat here. Is it's important for everyone who leads worship. If you're on an instrument or you're the actual vocal leader, anywhere in between, you're leading worship not just when you're on the platform, but all of the time as part of the church. And so how you respond, how you engage, if you're goofing around while the sermon's on because you already heard this one, an hour ago or whatever, those things start to ripple as a standard. You're a standard bearer. Yeah. And so I don't think it's too unrealistic for us to use the Bible as a standard for behavior. And seeing as we're a church, why not? Why not just take the Bible and go, hey, we're going to take this seriously and let this be our standard.
Right.
And when we take that seriously, I think in the Old Testament context, what we see is the Levites. Mm-hmm. And I'd encourage you, if you haven't, do a study on the Levites. Take a look at the standard that the Levites were called to uphold. And what was their task? What was their function? And look at what that could foreshadow, because everything in the Old Testament is meant to foreshadow what we live in reality here in the New. What does it foreshadow when Levites were tasked with, for example, maintaining fire in the presence of the Lord? Right? Maintaining a fire takes a lot of consistent attention. So that active relationship and sensitivity to the presence of the Lord, as well as some of the lifestyle requirements that set us apart from everyone else. Mm-hmm. And, a standard sounds like religion to someone who has no standard.
Right.
Right? So if we're going to set a standard and people are bucking against it, the reality is there is a standard in your worship community right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
But if you can't articulate it, then it's a loose standard. Mm-hmm. So having a standard that's articulated, that is modeled, not just, rules on a wall, and that is stewarded in a merciful, understand that we're walking with God. One of the things that is really important as we build worship community is we don't want Sunday ministry or platform ministry to become the trophy.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that we can communicate that it's the trophy is if that's what we take away from you because you confess something.
Right.
Right? So what that could convey is better not say anything or I'll never get to lead worship here again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's a delicate balance here where there are some things that of necessity, what do you like? And again, I use questions. What do you think we need to do right now? Based on what you're telling me, what do you think that means about your involvement in worship? And it's so much more powerful for someone to be like, I think I need a few months off. You know what? I agree with that. I think, right? Like, it's so much more powerful than saying, you're not on for 3 months. But if you have to say it, you got to say it. Mm-hmm. But the point is leading someone to the understanding that these standards matter, and they only matter if we hold them.
Right.
But if someone comes to you and they say, I'm struggling in this area, and we're like, okay, well, depending on what it is, I don't want to get into specifics, but depending on what it is, if it's, well, you have to sit automatically, we have a rule that someone like you, we could communicate to the whole community, don't speak up. Hide your struggles. Yeah. Hide your sin. And that's not what we want. But what we do want at the same time, if every truth is held between 2 points of tension, we also over here, we want to actually hold a standard that means something, that you're living a lifestyle that is set apart. Mm-hmm. And it's different. Like we said yesterday, worship isn't an area of involvement, it's an area of service.
Right.
So, you could be involved at Lake Mount, you could work in our parking lot and not even love Jesus. That's fine. If you come here and that's something that you're passionate about, great. You're on a journey, you're figuring out, and you're making some friends, that's fine. But if you're an amazing guitarist and you don't love Jesus, you're not playing on our worship team.
Right.
And that's a put your money where your mouth is thing. We don't platform talent at the expense of character.
Right. Because
we're reproducing something into the atmosphere that's invisible but tangible. It can be felt. If a minstrel anointing can be felt, like when Pastor Levi's playing this morning and you can just feel the presence of God in that kind of that harassment moment of deliverance, if that can be felt, so can uncleanness.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And so we need to hold a standard. And so when we say that we don't tolerate that stuff, in the Old Testament, it's that Levite standard. In the New Testament, basically, if you look at what Paul says to Timothy about deacons, kind of like a deacon standard. Not like the overseer, the elder, but like a deacon level of, we want you to be a serious Christian.
Right.
And it's reflected in your lifestyle, and not just that you look serious for 35 minutes on a Sunday.
Right.
But that you're really living this. Right?
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, just to add to that too, when walking with people, people that are already in the worship community, that maybe they're not living up to these standards. The goal, I would say, is restoration. Not that we want to just say, you're dead to me. You're never going to be on this team again. But, and not making any promises either, but making a way in your own heart for the belief that this person could come around, and also possibly, depending on the situation, making a way for restoration as well, and a plan for restoration.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So with high empowerment, this kind of ties into everything, comes high confrontation, right? So on a Sunday morning, you're giving a platform, you're giving high empowerment. And with that is going to come, people should know, and by the way that you're saying it, and leading, I think we should lead in a way that people know, it's going to have some serious conversations sometimes if you're not living to this standard, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a high confrontation allowance when you are living in that relationship level.
Someone who's given a great deal of influence needs to understand that with that comes a higher degree of checks and balances.
Yeah. Right.
And so if it's whoa, who are you to talk into my life about that? Well, who are you to stand in front of this congregation and lead them in worship if you don't want
Right.
someone to be speaking into your life, right? Like so,
Yeah.
so it's again high empowerment, high confrontation. Like we're holding that standard. When it becomes a community, I think a culture is like an immune system. When you're healthy, your immunity attacks what is foreign and unhealthy.
Right.
Right? And so when something unhealthy surfaces, if the culture is healthy, it just naturally squeezes that out. Like, oh, that joke didn't fly here.
Mm-hmm.
That comment didn't fly here. Oh,
Right.
like this isn't how we behave. Like the culture starts to actually, for lack of a better term, kind of police itself. But that's not overnight. Like, oh, we're going to put some core values on the wall and everyone's going to get it. Like it's living this out, week in, week out. So yeah, intentional, high empowerment, high confrontation. I think one of the things that is just true of leadership is if I as a leader, if I give someone a role, okay, so I give them a role, I give them a job, I also give them influence. If I take away their role and their job, I can't take away their influence. The influence came with what I empowered. And so I'm just saying, do it carefully.
Yeah.
Right.
Because when someone steps out of their role, their influence remains. And so if you haven't had high confrontation conversations along the way, and something goes sideways, it'll really go sideways later because there hasn't been that back and forth understanding of what it means to bear a standard.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's good. Yeah, I think that's also why it's so important that we just do relationship well with people the whole way through. So that when if a confrontation happens, it doesn't feel like, well, this is the first time you're talking to me, buddy. Like, right? Like, you're just using me on the platform, but then now you want to tell me how to live. Like, I think we really actually need to walk and love our communities well to be able to speak into them properly as well.
Which you can't do from a distance.
Right.
And that's what you'll see as we dig further into how we build a community, is you can't do community from a distance. You have to be, everyone uses this phrase, but doing life together, there has to be a sense of really deeply knowing one another. And you can't know everybody, but if everyone knows somebody deeply, you're building strong community that way.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's good. All right, so some of the things that we do, we're just going to go through some of the things that we do to build the culture. One of those things is Wednesday night rehearsals. So we don't take the approach of just, playing through the arrangement and just nailing the arrangement. Of course, we want to nail the arrangement, but in our Wednesday night rehearsals, we take a burnt offering approach, where if we do something that doesn't work, it's a burnt offering to the Lord, but also our hearts are in a posture of worship during a Wednesday rehearsal. It's not just, hey, we want to nail this so that we look really cool and we look great. We want to be worshipful from the beginning of rehearsal to the end. We want God to have glory in that. And so that's one of the ways that we do that.
I think that in the Wednesday rehearsal, when you really worship together in the rehearsal time, you're learning how to follow the leading of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're not just, it's easy to default, let's be honest, it's easy to default in, okay, let's start it this way, what's the BPM, what are we, right? And just work through beginnings, endings, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's easy to be like, and then when the service is, then we turn it on. Now we're eyes closed and worshiping or whatever.
Yeah.
But what if we took an approach of worship in the rehearsal? Yeah. Then we can discern some of those, and we were talking about that yesterday with set list. Then you can discern some of those. You know what would go really good here is if we, medleyed into this, or if we, right? And so that again is building community, and again just things that sometimes need to be said out loud. Like we pray before we have a rehearsal.
Right.
So we ask God to come and help us and pray together, which then leads to community prayer. Like people are praying for one another and digging into that whole thing together too. So
Another way that we've modeled just this burnt offering approach, and it doesn't happen every rehearsal, but just as an example, I hope you don't mind, Becca, but this Sunday, Becca was leading, and we did Great Are You, Lord everybody knows Great Are You, Lord, right? We did Great Are You, Lord in rehearsal on Sunday morning, but we're not planning on doing it on Sunday morning for church, just in the rehearsal, just as like, Lord, we just want to offer you something that's just for you. And that is a burnt offering completely. There was no heart in it of like, we just want this song to be on even in the list. And it was just, this is for you, Jesus. And so that's one of the ways that we also show that. Yeah.
One of the other things that we do in terms of building worship community, and this one I think is maybe a little bit of secret sauce that could actually really be helpful if you're not doing this, is we have a worship review after the service. So for us, after second service, with our worship team every Sunday. And that's because I'll let you in on a secret. If you're not doing it, it's happening anyways.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So get your hand on it and get your voice into it. So because what we found was when we began this as a practice, we were undoing the unofficial review that was sort of being chaired by sarcasm and cynicism. And what it does, that sarcasm, that again, one of the things we don't tolerate, the sarcasm, disrespect, a mocking spirit, is that nothing will quench freedom of expression quicker than that.
Yeah.
And the willingness to go, here's a song I wrote. The willingness to go, I was thinking maybe we can, I don't know how to say it, like, like could you play, and like if people start laughing when you're being vulnerable, you're never, but when you can build a community that's like, how like this, and there's no mocking to it.
Yeah.
It's safe for me to try to express my creativity, right? That's the goal. So worship review, there's a couple rules to it that we don't tell people the rules. We're telling you the rules if you want to use this. The rule is like, it is basically just a backslapping session in worship. Like, you did amazing. Like, that was so good. Because what's going to happen? Todd's going to be like, oh man, I felt so bad when I started in the wrong key. And I was like, it's okay, man. We got there. And right, the person who made a mistake is going to just need to unburden a little bit.
Yeah.
And like every once in a while, I get reminded why we do this. Like one of our younger worship leaders said, it was maybe her third time leading. She led a song. She did great. And so, we're going through, hey man, that sounded great. Bass was awesome. This, and it's just like everyone did a good job. And Hannah, you did amazingly in that song. And she's so quiet. She's like, really? I wasn't sure. And like Norma's so quiet, and here I wasn't sure. I felt like what, and it was like, man, this is why we do this. Because this young worship leader needs to know you did amazing.
Yeah.
And we're telling you, we're not pumping your tires, we're telling you. And you might think, well, what's the point if it's just backslide? It's not just like people get to talk through like, yeah, okay, well, it was kind of bad when we started and the BPMs were still from the first song, but like, that we had to mention it. But again, that's what talkback's for. Everyone kind of gets to feel like, okay, I can own my mistake, but not be mocked for it.
Right.
That's good. Constructive feedback or meaningful feedback is not in that forum.
Right.
That's one-on-one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
So if someone really missed it or really went somewhere that, was like, dude, like you did great, but you walked in like just on time or something, like that's not in front of the whole group. Hey, we all want you to know we're mad you were late. You know what I mean? Because that takes what we're talking about, and the community and the culture becomes toxic of, telling on one another. But if in the community we can be taking time to review, what did we, that new song went amazing, things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it also builds a culture of safety, like we're saying. But it makes people feel safe enough to take risks, right? Like, so if everything feels like, oh, like somebody's going to make fun of me if I mess up, like how much more likely are you going to mess up, right?
Seriously.
Like if you're feeling like, I better not mess up, or Pastor Matt's going to scold me or something. Then like the more you're thinking about that and nervous about it, the more likely you're going to hit some black keys when you should only be hitting white keys,
Right.
in the key of C or something.
Right.
So I think it's that, but also like with the minstrel anointing, we were talking about that. I think it gives way for people to go, I'm going to take a risk right now, because there's a culture of safety that's built in.
Can you just do this? Take an inventory of times where God surprised you in worship? Okay. How many times was it like, oh, we started in the wrong key and we just in front of the whole church? Sorry, we're in the wrong key. We're just gonna change that, and God moves in.
Yeah.
I'm not saying let's do mistakes on purpose, but I'm saying that sometimes just the safety of, wait a sec, I think what that is like, oh, it's not a show.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not a performance.
Yeah.
These people aren't up here trying to impress. They can own, whoops, this is the wrong key, or this is the whatever. And like, again, I'm not saying make a practice of that, but I'm just saying think of the times when you felt like, whoa, I hit the wrong this, I did and God moves in because of vulnerability, I think is what it comes down to.
Right.
And so we really want a culture of safety in the worship community where taking risks is celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't take a risk if you have to have guaranteed success. Because that's by definition not a risk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be willing to just leap off and be like, well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
Like one time, I often will come up and just kind of steward the last few moments of worship, whatever. And one time I got up and I wanted to sing "To Worship You I Live,"
Yeah.
To worship you I live. It's great when it was there, but I was like, oh, it's just so perfect right here, except for we were like, to worship you I live. And it was just like, okay. Any females want to help me out here? Yeah, like where you're just, but it's just, we have to be able to take risks. We're like, that kind of polite laughter isn't sarcasm. We all know the difference. Like this guy, oh brother, and so that review, I think, this is my assessment. I think that review took probably almost 3 years to settle into, okay, like the last deep breaths of no one's going to make fun. I think it took a while for that to actually be the community standard, because encouraging people to write songs in the context where sarcasm had kind of gotten away from us was really tricky. People would write songs in secret and present them in secret. And I think we just, that really, 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 if you're not doing something like that and regular, like we do it every week, it just helps people unburden where they feel like, was that okay? And also just keeps pulling people together.
So do you do that with just the musicians on the platform, or do you include like sound media? Sometimes the issues can be from like the sound background and whatever. Because again, I'm part of the team, my family's on different members of the worship team, so we have different conversations. Is that just the platform people that do that with you? Do you quote other areas that affect worship into that?
Yeah, the sound people do join us for that.
Yeah.
They have awesome things to say, just
They
as
do.
far
Yes,
as
they
like
do.
what they saw
Yes.
God doing,
Yeah.
which is also just awesome to celebrate what God did that Sunday, right? All together as a team. But the other media people right now, the pro presenter people, the people on camera, the director that we have, they're all doing their separate meetings. So this is part of our culture that
They do a review as well.
I see.
We want everybody to just unburden in this same way, team building in this way. But we are actually working on, we're moving the lyrics person from up in our media suite into the sanctuary. Because the feeling is that it's such a vital part of the worship in the room that they need to be in the room, because when you're in another room and you're hearing camera one, camera two, like they're hearing all this other stuff, we want them fully engaged in worship. And so I can see them becoming a part of this review. Just
So does somebody like facilitate that review time, or like how does that work from like leadership standpoint?
Yeah, I facilitate it every week. Just make sure we do it.
Yeah.
Pastor Matt's usually, you're doing other things often after service, pastoring, but that's something, I'm always making sure we do the review. It's important. So we often will do 10 minutes after service just to make sure people have a chance to, hang out with some people, chat with some people they didn't get a chance to chat with, and then we'll do the review, because that's also important.
We tell them it's 15 minutes after the end of service, the unofficial. Because we don't want rock star put, we're all going to the green room, you know what I mean? Like we want people to mix with the whole congregation. but yeah, like, so Levi is our worship community pastor, so this is like major to like taking on the whole communal aspect. So we did that together for first couple of years, and then it's like he's good to go and chairs that meeting, which is again just getting people to unburden and cheer one another along, because that just helps people take more courageous leaps in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So we touched on this a little bit, but we care for the needs of people in our worship community. So if somebody's going through something, like I said earlier, we don't want the only conversations we have with people are confrontations, right? So if somebody's going through something like, one of the ways we can show care is bring them a meal if they're, if all their kids are sick and they're sick or something, or they have a serious illness or something like that. Of course, you could bring them a meal. We can text them, like ask them how they're doing on a regular basis. Pray with them. That's super, super crucial. I think just as Christians, we should be praying with the people that we're in relationship with, right? Especially the people we're pastoring in this community. And so, yeah, we care for the people, and that builds the culture of family in our worship communities. Yeah.
That's true. We also we provide food for our worship community every Sunday, and that's mostly because of two services. If we go to one service, every man for himself. But because there's two services, worship people are here. So it's like, oh, that's not fair to everyone else. Well, worship people are here like 7:30 in the morning till 2, right? And so, and if they got kids and got whatever, so in between first and second, we have, and honestly, I feel like we have like a competition between all these ladies in the church who are trying to outdo each other with amazing food. And so we're the benefits of that. It's really good. But like protein and something, like muffins or something like that, little cakes or something like it. But like you have like sandwiches or wraps or whatever. And the church covers that, and again, that's like if that's possible to do. But it's one of the ways that builds community. It's breaking bread together,
right?
But it's also meeting a felt need. If you got up early, you're running out the door, maybe you had a Lara bar, and like by the time you're in between two services, you're like, I could have a sandwich right now. Yeah. It's just it's a practical thing, but again, we're just trying to make this as practical as possible. It's like just having some food. It's another way of like. Because this is the other thing, like we don't pay our musicians. We're not dropping honorariums, because you don't pay family. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so we value you, but we kind of have a culture of you get to do this, not you have to. So you get to do this, and where there's community happening, then it's not like, oh man, I could be hey, if you'd rather be somewhere else, maybe you should be. I mean, again, that's not what I would say to anybody. I'm saying this to you guys. But like the idea of you get to, but then we're pouring back in like just a really practical way. Just having something to eat is, I think, in the middle of like that's kind of halftime, right? Like we're still going to be there for another couple hours. I think it's a meaningful way of just saying to the worship community, we see you, we see your sacrifice, and yeah, totally, yeah,
it's good. All right, another thing we do is we have worship community nights every 2 months. So this really builds the culture of family, and actually is a great opportunity for songs to be shown. We have a great songwriting culture at Lakemount. We're probably doing an original song maybe every week, like every other week, if not.
Well, I mean, there's this rhythm of wanting to make sure that we're not just one-offs, but we're incorporating into the vocabulary of worship. But what is interesting, I would say, over the last little while, the songs we're writing are becoming our song. Like, these are the anthems that, like, they're our songs. And the cool thing is, like we'll often get notes like, I was looking everywhere for this song that we, where is, I went on Spotify and I went here, and then, it's, oh, sorry, we wrote that one, But the cool thing with that is, like, people are latching on, that's our song, that's our celebration, that's our worship, that's our whatever. And so, what we do with the songwriting on a worship community night is we ask people, send us your songs that you have written. And again, this has to be safe, right? So
Right.
think of what I'm going to say. Send a voice note of you singing your song, right? So, like, I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I'm like singing some falsetto women's part, whatever. It's like, okay, I'm going to send this, please don't post it to the interwebs, But send us that. And so Levi or I will take these songs and we'll play them to the worship community like as a blind taste test. And so the reason for that is so that you can get authentic feedback, because sometimes you can feel like what if everyone just says they like the song because they feel bad for me, or I have to say it because it's JV and he's leading, and but to get real raw feedback, right? So we take a song and we're just like, we'll play it, we'll sing it. So and what's really cool is sometimes like the quality of the song can get exposed right there.
Mm-hmm.
If people can latch on and sing when they don't really have the lyrics, but they can kind of get it and move with it as a worship community, it's like, oh, this song's got some legs,
Mm-hmm.
And so people, so we'll sing it. People will try to sing along, and then we're like, okay, what'd you think? And so then everyone's like, I love the bridge, or it's kind of cool. It sounds like, whatever. Everyone will name somebody that they're like, that sounds like, really bluesy, or it sounds whatever, and they'll name something. And then it's just kind of like, who do you think wrote it? And it becomes fun. So everyone's just like, Becca, nope, right? And so every once in a while, there's this sleeper on the team that's like, really? Wow. Like someone you didn't know was writing songs in there, right? And then we take those, and Levi goes and workshops those in the studio and tries to develop them, from there a bit more. And so that building community of, again, just putting your ideas out there, but being able to get constructive feedback without it being because it's me. People just said they liked it because it was my song, or you just get real, true feedback,
Right.
Which is
So
great.
good.
What else do we do at worship community nights, Levi?
We also eat.
Yeah.
So, like we do on Sunday mornings, everybody will bring, usually it's potluck. There has been the odd time where we treat people to pizza. But usually it's potluck.
That's an Italian food. For those of you who don't know, it's this round, anyway.
Yeah.
Pizza.
It's pretty rare.
It's rare.
It's a rare dish.
It's around here.
But yeah, so we eat together, which is just amazing. Conversations break out. And then we will worship together. Very important as a worship community. We show songs, like Pastor Matt said. And then, this is a great opportunity for us to pour in to our community, teaching and just continuing to build that culture. So either Pastor Matt or I will bring a word and we'll just pour into the community that way. Mm-hmm. And then we pray together. We pray for, revival. We've prayed for all sorts of things, like what we're feeling for this season. We just pray into something, and it's an awesome opportunity to pray together. And then we usually do like a game somewhere in there, or we just hang out. It's just, community building.
Again, a little secret sauce on that. We do that on Sunday night. And the reason for that is people have been engaged all day. Monday's coming, so no one gets a super late night out of it, right? Like everyone's got their internal clock going, like I've been up since 6,
Right.
But it also is pulling on the momentum of the day. And so you kind of have a start and an end in mind unofficially without it being rushed.
Right.
Because you know how sometimes it can feel like, oh, should we leave now? But it's kind of built in, if that makes sense. And so it works for us anyways. To do it on a Sunday, it's like, we all know it's already been somewhat a long day, but we look forward to this time together. And so that kind of just helps it keep moving. It's got some internal momentum in it. And I don't know that we would ever succeed. I don't know if you would ever succeed. If you succeed at this, you get to teach next year. But we never get 100%. I don't think you're ever going to get 100% of everybody that comes. But the invitation goes to everybody. We nudge everybody, put out the reminders. But it becomes a really great momentum builder in the community for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then another thing we do.
What?
This is like a worship community on steroids. So picture it, a worship community night, but like Arnold Schwarzenegger version. We do a worship community retreat every year. So this year we're going to Brayside, if you guys know Brayside Camp, maybe not. But yeah, so we do an overnight stay, and we also have a guest speaker coming in from out west who's going to pour into our worship community. And then we'll do also a few hours of songwriting all together. So we break out in little groups. And ultimately, it just becomes an awesome, something happens, I think, when you stay overnight with a crew. There's something then it's you become family for sure.
Right.
So, yeah.
And so the songwriting, we put on that, because again, we want to push on this. We want to push the creativity in the house. Whether we use all these songs or not isn't the point. It's pushing the creative process and the vulnerability that comes in writing songs together. And so what we do, so the first time, COVID really threw a wrench into things in terms of having retreats and stuff. So the first time would have been 2019, I guess. And we did a retreat together, and I was like, these psalms, I think we did Psalm 42 to Psalm 52 or something like that. It was just you can only pick whatever translation of the Bible you want. Your lyrics are in those psalms, period. So you're not rhyming, you're not just take those lyrics, lift them out of the psalms and write songs from there, and come back and show us what you got. And there's a couple songs they're in our repertoire. We sing these songs.
Yeah.
But again, it's to push. I heard this quote from Peter Gabriel a number of years ago, and it always stuck with me. He said the worst thing that you can do for an artist is give a painter a huge canvas with an unlimited supply of colors. He said, but give them a small canvas and 3 colors and see what they can do. And I just stuck, it's true. All of us, writer's block or whatever, it's when there's just too much. But just so that retreat was this, just frame in this. These are your lyrics. You don't even get to be creative with the lyrics. You have to take the Bible. So even the Passion Translation, you could right, and, right. Which actually I think was the version that we used in the song. But just that's set there for you. And then the last couple we did more the idea of the theme for the year. We every year, every January we have a theme for the year, and so it's write a song with the theme of the year in mind. And so pushing on that, or last year didn't we say let's haven't really had anything on Holy Spirit. We want Holy Spirit, seeking the work and the move of the Holy Spirit. Write a song that way. And so what we do is we'll split the teams off to make sure there's an anchor musician. So probably, what would you say, 5 groups of 5-ish?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact amount.
Depends on how many come. So if it starts 40 people, it's 8 groups of 5 or something like that. I think it was that. And so you have an anchor musician or 2. And someone who's one of our more okay being out in front singers, and then everyone else, right? And so it's just interesting to see the chemistry of these little groups coming back, and you've got 3 hours to write 2 songs, come back, and then we showcase them all.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. It's actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's actually cool too. So there is somebody that I've never heard write a song before in our worship community. Last time we were doing it, and they had some great ideas. So it's kind of cool. You never know what will come out of people, right? And so I just thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so another thing that we do is these next gen nights. So we're doing one next month, and this is basically just our younger worshipers, 25 and under, basically. And we want to have, so our worship community nights are for our Sunday team, right? But we want to make sure that our youth team, our young adult team, our kids worship team, they're all getting the culture as well, and that they're not being left to we want them to grow in our culture as well as they're coming up. And it's a great also family builder for the next gens as well. So that's another thing we do. And the last thing we're going to mention
is Excellence Nights.
So we've done this once so far, but this next year we're going to be doing a bunch of these. Basically, it was awesome. That's why we're going to be doing more of them. We get to work with some of our younger up and coming musicians. We have chief musicians come and each position. So there'll be like a bass player who's very experienced, a drummer who's very experienced, a guitar player who's very experienced, and then our younger, less experienced musicians get to come and learn and glean from these chief musicians. And it was just awesome. So we started with just a small, short teaching on excellence and why we bring our best, not out of a heart of glorifying ourselves, but to bring our best. Like, what would you bring if you were bringing something for a king? You wouldn't bring something scrappy and something you just threw together. You'd bring your absolute best for a king. And so we just did a short teaching on that. And then we broke out in groups, and each person basically went with their chief musician and learned, what would you do for this song? And so they showed them what they would play. And at the end, we all came together, and the younger musicians got to play all together. And so, yeah, we also went over stuff like Nashville number system. So we're getting that in their minds at a young age, which is just awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, that ties in, if you've been here over the last 2 days, like that ties into pipeline, right? Like that's a way that we're strengthening the induction into the pipeline, is you're not just, swirling through the pipeline on your own, but someone's coming alongside showing you, here's how I do it. Here's how I lift a bass line out of a song that I'm hearing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because most people are lifting from ear. 100% are lifting from ear. Like, I don't think, but does anyone actually get an actual chart? Like, everyone's lifting by ear. So showing people how to do that, how to just play through and pull those parts and create tone, all that stuff. And so you're building more confidence into the next generation as they're coming up, right? So, yeah. So it's good. So those are some of the things we do to build community. I don't know if there's any questions, comments, feedback,
Concerns.
Concerns, rude innuendos.
Complaints.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a curiosity question. So you were mentioning earlier with debrief that you guys don't deal with issues. So what is, just like on personal or pastoral level, your kind of MO when dealing with something that maybe you saw an individual issue on a Sunday? Would you do it immediately after the debrief with just that person, or would you maybe just depending on what it is, wait it out and see if it becomes a recurring problem? Is there a process, or is it just kind of feeling it out with each situation for you guys?
I think there's case by case to that, because if there's something if it was a mixed situation, I want to say it right then. I want to say after the Sunday service, right? Whatever the bass was killing us this morning. But next time I wouldn't say it like that, but you know what I mean? You got to bring the bottom out just a little bit, and help people see why. Because you're actually, bass players are the best sound people, right? I think it's because they sit in the pocket with everyone, and so they get, right? So you kind of have a little boost there, but people tend to favor their instrument if they're mixing, right? So all of a sudden you get tons of keys because the keyboard guy's on sound. So just, hey, it's probably because you're a keyboard guy, but you know what? You're not mixing your in-ears right now. You're mixing for the whole church. So those types of things we want to say in real time. Somebody sitting in the green room during a sermon, that's day of. You're not doing that again. Are you feeling okay? Is everything all right? Because, right? Totally. So you chase stuff like that down, but other things you might just keep an eye on.
Totally. Right? If somebody never comes late, and then they come late one Sunday, it's not something I'm gonna address.
Right.
Yeah. And usually it's so sorry, you know what I mean? So
you better be.
Yeah. There's a bit of grace there too. Yeah, we've been waiting.
Here's another vulnerable question. What if it's your kids on the worship team, and you have that parent dynamic with them? You're the pastor, the worship leader, but the parent, and you're getting teenage stuff from them,
right,
in front of the team, and do I go toe to toe with them?
Yeah. So yeah, been there, done that. I think the key there is expressing the uniqueness of home and public ministry. And so the way that we relate at home, don't call me pastor at home. Kind of our thing here, in the office and whatever, Levi will just call me Pastor Matt. Yeah, it sets a tone of this isn't weird for everybody. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and so that's just that in that regard. But you know, when your kids are involved and they're younger and they got hormones and they got all that stuff, I think it's always better to have an awkward conversation before an awkward event. Better to establish some ground rules before something goes off the rails, right? Like better to say, so listen, you know, I want you to watch how other people address me and how they listen to me, and I want you to sit and you know, see the distinction, right? And then if there is something that just kind of call out, you know, nobody actually, you know, talks to me that way. Did you notice that? Like, you're the only one, right, that has that little tone. And so could we work on that? And so heated moments aren't the moments. I don't think in front of everybody is the moment, unless they royally step in it, but probably they're not, right? So I think it's probably just more calling out that in the behind the scenes, we're going to be cooperating and you're going to see me really functioning where I lead in this context. And I want you to kind of put a pause button on the way we normally interact and just watch how others interact there. And learn that, you know, and then there's some things you do have to call out, like you don't want anyone to think you're on the worship team because you're my kid, right? Right? Like you don't want them to think that, right? Right. So you're going to have to earn your stripes. So it's like you're going to have to serve. You don't want it to look like you came in here on coattails. And I won't do that for you. So speak to me a certain way. I will speak to you the way I'd speak to anybody else. Right? And spelling that out, making that clear, ideally before there's a situation, becomes something you can point back to and go, remember when we talked about that? You know, there was some tone to what you said there. The other thing is there are sometimes, and I pray these people for you, there's sometimes people who will see it and just kind of like, hey, buddy, I know that's your dad, but that wasn't cool, right? And if that can happen, again, that's the immune system working for you, right? That's just like, thank you, right? But yeah, that's very real, because the goal is like, don't we all want to worship together, have our kids come with us, have them go past us, have them, like, that's the goal. But there are some optics that you need to be ahead of. You're not here because you're my kid. And you can shine, you can outshine, you can do whatever, but not with attitude and tone, and anything that's there, I'm going to call you like anyone else. Right?
Right.
So that's great. It probably applies to a lot of people, or will. Right? So
Thank you.
yeah, thanks, Tom.
That's good. I'm sorry for all the teenage attitude.
We'll talk after. Yeah.
So as the worship community pastor, how often are you involved in the practices and every Sunday playing or being involved in some capacity?
Yeah, so I'm at every rehearsal, whether I'm playing or not. I like to be there. I like to help with the sound. You know, if the sound person's there, I like to hear their mix. I also just like being a part of the rehearsal in the sense that I get a feel for the culture and where people are at when I'm there.
Plus you get the room ready for it, right? Like
Yeah.
nothing's worse than showing up and the lines aren't run or whatever. So like there's all that too, right?
Totally. Yeah, so set up. Yeah, so I'm there. But I would say my goal, and this does not happen, just being honest, this doesn't happen often. My goal would be to be off the platform or off anything once a month. That would be my goal. But there's often where, you know, somebody's sick last minute or something, I'll jump in. Or things like that, right? So it does
not just in sanctuary, but kids, man,
with
or
kids
like
at the
that.
same
Levi
time.
will often just like he'll pitch it and lead worship with the kids or something, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the goal, but honestly, it doesn't always happen.
Also, I'm sorry, thinking about scheduling, you said sometimes people are on like every 6 weeks and things like that. So how much of a schedule, if you don't use teams like Team A, Team B, Team
Yeah.
C, how do you schedule people?
Yeah, so we do 9 weeks. We do a 9-week schedule. And then once that schedule, hopefully, is this the kind of questions, is this the kind of answer you're looking for? So once that schedule gets to about 2 weeks out, then we make another one and we send it out.
Okay.
So yeah, so we don't want it to be too far, or else like, because we're always who are we pairing with who, and that those kind of dynamics can change over time. Like sometimes there's a pair that goes together, we try out, and it just goes amazingly. And so we're like, why don't we do that again?
No.
Yeah, and sometimes people work better with others, right? Not in a personality sense. We have a very unified team, which is amazing, but just in a gifting, musical gifting sense. So, we're always reading that.
And someone who's playing once every 6 weeks, that's Sunday. They could still be involved on a Monday night with young adults, or a Friday night with youth, or a Sunday morning with kids. And so typically, how often would our typical musician on a monthly basis play?
Yeah, I mean, that also depends on life,
So
like where they're in life as well, right?
So so Tom's real estate agent, he would play how often?
Once every month and a half. Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
On a Sunday.
On a Sunday.
And then Brando
Yeah.
would be the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, he'd get off once a month.
He'd
Yeah.
maybe sit once.
Yeah.
Because if he's not playing guitar, he's playing bass. If he's not playing bass, he's playing acoustic. If he's not playing acoustic, he's mixing online sound, or he's mixing sound in the room, or he's playing with the kids, and he loves all of it. But this is just for free. Nobody burns out doing what they hate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to watch, right? You have to watch because like they burn out because they say yes to everything, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to, but there's also capacity too. So I can't go like Brando's like the Energizer Bunny. If we made him do what Tom does, he would hate his life.
Yeah.
But Tom wants to give us his best, but he's also Sundays is a real estate day. It's a lot, right? And a Wednesday night too. But he's made it a priority, right?
Yeah.
So he'll give us that once every month, every 6 weeks. But Brando would just like he's gonna serve somewhere anyways. You know what I mean? He wants in.
For example, I didn't have him on this conference at all because I was like, Brandon's playing all the time. Like, let's give him a break. And he approaches me. I can play every day for the conference. I'll play any single time. So like, it's that sort of thing.
But that's capacity too, though, right? Like, and so you can't have a universal rule that starts the person who naturally just has that capacity,
Right.
and their heart for the house is being fueled by it. It's not right, but we still have to watch that there isn't the threshold of burnout where it becomes too much. And you've got to watch energy more than just what's on paper. You have to watch how the person is interacting, how they're feeling, you know, and if they're declining a bit, you know, you don't want to start watching, right?
Mhm.
So,
Is how you've been running sound at this conference how you typically run sound, and then what are your like expectations and standard of sound, and how do you communicate that?
Yeah. So for this conference, basically people operate mostly off of one show. If there was another show that they copied and pasted, it's made from this one. And by show, I mean, I don't mean it's a show, but I mean on the soundboard we call it a show.
On the
We say
digital
something.
sound.
Yeah.
So you're not starting from zero. You're starting from where we mixed the week before. Whatever.
We're starting from a template that we know sounds great. So that's one of the things. Pastor Matt mentioned it in one of the other, I think in the last session, about how we want to mix, which is we don't want it to be too loud so that nobody can hear any of the voices or we can't hear each other. We also don't want it to be too quiet so that it's awkwardly quiet, that you can hear a pin drop kind of thing. So there's those things, but that also depends on the room, right? So like if there's more bodies in the room, like the volume's going to come up, right? Like, because then the voices are louder. If there's less bodies in the room, like the volume just tends to be lower because we still want to hear the voices. We want it to feel like corporate worship because it is corporate worship, right?
So that's the threshold that we communicate. If you can't hear the singers, there's something. Not the singers, the room. If you can't hear the room singing, adjust.
Yeah.
That like if you're not hearing voices in the room, adjust. And you know, and then there's a threshold there. So you know, I try to leave it alone, but then I just realized kind of like I text probably every week. Just like so like the service this morning, fantastic mix, just riding the line of a bit hot. So I said pull it back 10%. And he did, but if you do it at the right moment, which we've worked that out, if you do it at the right moment, people don't love it. If it's in the middle and all of a sudden, it's like, what happened? But if while we go to a quiet moment, it gets quieter, but then again, it's just about it. You're pastoring from there,
Yeah.
right? Like it's helping everybody have the experience together.
Yeah.
Are you focusing then less on decibels and more on like
Yes.
what happens depending on the
Decibel meters are worthless. I mean, they use them, but I tell them I could care less. I don't care about decibel meter. It's
Then
about
for
the
measuring like during practice, and I'm like, I don't know that that's super effective. 'Cause there's nobody in the room, the chairs aren't in the room yet.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what worked in service 1,
Right.
you have to start over in service 2.
Right.
Like at the very least, maybe you're just pulling the overall back. Maybe you've got a great mix, but the room is different because who's in there,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, a decibel meter is a novelty.
Question about the Wednesday night rehearsals, so it's kind of a two-part question. Is that generally for all your musicians that would play on Sunday? And if so, how do you schedule who plays on, like if you're rehearsing songs, you've got a number of different keys or, lead guitars or whatever. How do you manage that so that people learning the songs and the team gets to play together with so many different musicians?
Yeah, so Sunday morning rehearsals, so we do a midweek rehearsal on
Yes.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Is that the rehearsal you're asking about?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out what is the difference and how do you manage to give people an opportunity to play and to rehearse with each other
Yeah.
when there's so
Okay.
many different people.
So yeah, so we don't have the entire worship community come
Yeah.
on Wednesday.
Oh,
So
okay.
who's scheduled to play on Sunday comes to rehearsal on Wednesday.
I
Yeah.
see.
And so they're working through arrangement, feel, and flow.
I
And then
see.
Sunday morning is essentially a sound check. So if you do Sunday morning well, you can be in and out in half an hour, 20 minutes, really. Like you can run them one more time. But it's refreshing your memory, but also just getting levels, really.
Okay.
But yeah, we wouldn't have everybody just sitting there going, could I try playing bass for a bit? Yeah, it's what's on schedule. That's
Yeah. I never get a turn.
Yeah, you always go through. Yeah.
Okay, I love all the things that you, I have so many things, but all the things you guys do. I just am wondering how your team reacts to, or their response is to the amount of things that they are expected to come out to. Like, I would love, for everybody to be excited about all the things, but I also get that they have lives and there's a lot of things that happen. So what is your team's response kind of to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does depend a bit on personality and a little bit what we were saying. Like, so Brandon might be different, like he's super high capacity in a different
Single
stage
guy.
of life. Yeah,
23.
totally. Then, somebody who has tons of kids and, just different stage of life. For those people, I think, like we were saying, like we try to manage not overscheduling. So hopefully I can pick on you again, Becca. So Becca, for example, one of our main worship leaders, but you're on once a month. So and that's a conversation we've had, like in the season, like this is what I can give right now. And that's amazing. We're happy to have her in that capacity. And, but I don't know if that helps you at all.
So, sorry, just to add on to like the community nights and then the excellent nights and all those things too. Is there like an excitement that your team has to come out to all those things?
Yeah, I think there is an excitement that drives those nights to go well. If there wasn't and the numbers were really dwindling, we haven't really experienced that too much.
No.
There's been an excitement, and I think a lot of that is with not overscheduling people.
And we say every 2 months, and that's kind of like the goal. But realistically, it probably ends up being like by the end of the year,